And hello, everyone, and welcome to Red Sports Talk, your home for all the latest and greatest on the New York Jets. Thank you so much for joining us here on the program today. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of our latest content. And check out our community pages for all the latest polls to see what videos you'd like to see come to the channel next. And of course, if you can't join us during our live streams on YouTube, you can always check us out wherever podcasts are available: SoundCloud, Spreaker, TuneIn, Spotify. If you can listen to a podcast, you can take us in your pocket. And again, we are in the middle of the off season right now, and I thought this would be a good time to have a little bit of reflection. So today I'm going to do something a little bit different. And if you guys like the format of the show today, please let me know in the comments. Again, if you're enjoying us in the live stream, you can always jump in with your comments and questions and use that super chat feature to not only jump to the front of the line, but provide us with more, basically help us grow the channel and provide more content. So today I thought, let's look at the Jets roster. Now, again, it isn't fully complete. We don't know what's going to happen in training camp with cuts, maybe some late additions in free agency. But I feel like the general roster at this point has been set, where at least we have a good idea of what this roster is going to look like for the 2025 season. And that had me thinking, what areas has this team gotten better at and what places have they gotten weaker at? And I wanted to go position by position because, again, I think the Jets have done a very good job this offseason addressing key depth, but are they a lot better in certain areas? Were they weaker in others? Now, again, full disclosure, there's a lot that we have to consider. There's a lot of rookies and second-year players that if they take big steps forward, can maybe help us look back at this list and go, you know what? Maybe we were wrong. But this is generally how I look at this position talent-wise, but also keep in mind the depth. Do the Jets have good depth at this position, or are they a key injury or two away from having a major issue? So let's start with this, and here's how this is going to work. I'm going to go through the position, and I'm going to tell you if it's an upgrade, which is I think the Jets have upgraded the position, a downgrade, which means it's a downgrade, or a push. Now, a push is basically I don't see a huge difference between the two from the previous year. So let's get into it with, of course, the biggest position for the New York Jets, always the quarterback position. Now, the quarterback position is fascinating because at first glance, your first thought is, well, it's clearly a downgrade because Aaron Rodgers is no longer on this team. And while, yes, this passing offense will clearly not be the same for this 2025 season, I am going to have a bit of a hot take here. I think that this is a push. Now, again, before everyone rushes to yell at me and scream at me, here are the two reasons why I think that this is a push. Number one, I think with Justin Fields, it allows you to have a more complete offense because it allows you to have a guy that can line up under center, which allows guys like Breece Hall and the running backs to get a full head of steam and not be constantly coming out of the shotgun. You also knew at times last year, Aaron Rodgers had no mobility, no threat to run, wasn't going to run for a first down. The ability that Fields brings in the running game, I do think it's underestimated. And the biggest thing is the second reason. To me, Justin Fields is clearly not the arm talent. He's clearly not the productive player that Aaron Rodgers is. But I will tell you this, he is highly coachable. And this is the problem I would have with this quarterback position last year, which is Aaron Rodgers would get a play from the sideline, roll his eyes, and call whatever he wants. You know that Justin Fields is going to run Tanner Engstrom's offense. You know he's going to listen to this coaching staff. You know that he is going to follow a game plan, and he is going to execute the offense as it's designed. Will there be times this season where he will drive us nuts because he doesn't have the great accuracy? Yes. Is there going to be times where we will miss Aaron Rodgers being able to push the ball down the field? Yes. But what he brings with his legs, the running game, and also the ability to line up under center to allow the running game to have a better chance, I actually think it's a push. And I do think that, yes, in the passing game, I do think it is a downgrade. But the ability to avoid the sacks, ability to run the football, and have that running threat at the quarterback position is why I have this as a push. The running back positions. Now, again, many of you would say, well, this is a push because it's pretty much the same room. But I actually will argue that it is an upgrade, and here's why. Number one, we know Breece Hall will be healthy at the start of the season. You say he was nicked up during last season. The other reason is even though they will be learning a new offense, Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen will be coming into year 2. They will know what to expect. They've had a training camp ahead of them. I think that they will hit the ground running and be ready to rock and roll from day one and have a big step in this offense, especially with how much they're going to run the football. And the other thing we keep forgetting is that the New York Jets also added an intriguing running back in Donovan Edwards. Now, Donovan Edwards, we saw, had the great career at Michigan, but he also brings something to this offense that I think is undervalued, which is a really great pass-catching running back. And because of that ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, be utilized in the screen game, he could be a real dark horse to make this roster and make the final 53 and add another weapon to this running back room. Look, Breece Hall is going to need a breakout year for 2 reasons. He needs to get a contract or if he's going to increase his trade value. But overall, I think this room will be benefited with a quarterback that will be running back friendly. They're going to be relying on the running game. I think the offensive line will be better. I think they'll be in better situations. And these running backs can actually line up with a quarterback under center instead of constantly 5 to 6 yards behind the line of scrimmage in the shotgun. So I have the running back position upgraded from last season. Now we move on to the wide receiver position. I think that this is pretty obvious. Despite Garrett Wilson's greatness, this is a downgrade. I mean, let's be honest. When Davante Adams was your number 2 last year for basically half the season, and we saw how productive he could be, losing that's going to be a big impact. I mean, right now, this wide receiver room is wide open. And I've said this many times on the show. A part of me feels Allen Lazard is not going to finish this year as a Jet, whether he'll be traded in training camp or before the trade deadline. I just don't see him be a full-time Jet this year. Now, I do think Josh Reynolds can be a productive wide receiver. I like the ability he brings to the blocking game. But him as your number 2 is definitely a downgrade compared to Davante Adams. They brought in Tyler Johnson. Arian Smith obviously will be the huge X factor, the draft pick that the Jets selected. I think he's going to get a lot of role in this offense. And the big X factor is Malachi Corley. But again, outside of Garrett Wilson in this room, this position room is just questions. We don't know how they're going to be utilized. We don't know who's going to step up to be the number 2 or 3 receiver. And the other thing with this position, too, is I'm not sure how much this offense is going to feature them. I think you're going to see a lot of 12 personnel. And I really think you're going to see these running backs get a lot of play as wide receiver or pass catching options. So this wide receiver room compared to last year is clearly a downgrade. Moving on to the tight end position. And of course, the Jets added Mason Taylor, their second-round pick with pick 42 in the second round. Of course, they have Jeremy Rucker coming back. Stone Smart was the addition as well. Zach Kuntz will also be back on this team. And look, I'm going to say that this is a downgrade right now. And the reason is, as much as I love the potential of Mason Taylor, we need to see him be productive on the field. And the other thing, too, is he's going to have growing pains as a rookie. Say what you want about Tyler Conklin. You knew what he was. He was a starting caliber tight end in the National Football League. He was highly productive when he was with the Jets. A part of me was hoping they would bring him back on a 1-year contract to ease in these guys. Now, could Jeremy Ruckert all of a sudden turn it up another gear because he now has a quarterback with familiarity with? Could that be something that also helps him develop? Because Jeremy Ruckert to this point has been a bit underwhelming. Stone Smart is more of a big wide receiver. I'm very fascinated to see how the Jets will use him. I mean, for all we know, Smart could be the big wide receiver on the outside when they line up as opposed to winding up with Josh Reynolds. So this tight end room, like the wide receiver room, has a lot of questions. But at least with this room, I see at least Smart progressing. I see a lot of upside with Mason Taylor. Jeremy Ruckert, who knows, maybe this will be a nice upgrade with him. So again, I think right now it's a downgrade, but it's one of those positions I do think could easily be moving up throughout the season. Before we get to the offensive line, make sure to use those super chat features to jump to the front of the line. If you're here in the live stream, make sure to jump in with your comments. Would love to hear what you have to say. Moving on to the offensive line. And I think a lot of people might be surprised by this, but I think it's a big upgrade. They spent the first-round pick on my favorite tackle in the draft, Olu-Fashion, who got his feet wet last year, and I think looks the part of a left tackle. You have Elijah Vera Tucker, a full year off of the Achilles. John Simpson was great in the season, and Joe Tippmann looks like he is developing to a very good center. But the biggest reason why I give this upgrade to this offensive line isn't even necessarily because they gotten younger and put a lot of value into it, but I love the depth. Josh Myers is a starting caliber offensive lineman. The Jets have now great depth at the interior. Josh Myers is a plug-and-play guy who, if there's an injury in the interior three, he can pitch in and it won't be a liability, unlike what we've seen in previous years. And I also have to give credit to Okorafor. I think that was a nice sign. This is a guy that's had 50 starts at right tackle. Again, if there's an injury on this tackle side, you feel like he can at least be in there and be a decent spot starter. I'm curious to see how Carter Warren will fare under this. Will they move Max Mitchell back to not But for the first time in a long time, not only the Jets, I think, have a lot of talent on this offensive line, but I like their depth, where I feel like if there's an injury or two, it's not like 2 years ago where basically the season ended because of 2 offensive line injuries. This feels like the Jets have at least depth in key positions on the offensive line. And this could be really the big strength of this team, as PFF quoted. I mean, PFF had the Jets as what they believe the 9th best offensive line in the NFL. And I do think that this definitely has a lot of potential. And this will be the unit that everyone will be keeping their eyes on this season. Let's move to the defensive side of the ball, ladies and gentlemen. Let's start with the defensive line. Now, I think that this is an upgrade from last season. I think Will McDonald's really coming into his own and is becoming a double-digit sack expert every single season. But here's the other reasons. Number one, Jermaine Johnson's back. But the other thing I look at too is, and I know this is kind of by default, but I do think that, yes, they didn't have the sexiest offseason, but they had Derek Nandi, Brian Cowart, Jay Tufel. The big thing is they also drafted Tyler Barron. And again, I know a lot of people aren't like jumping out of their seats for Tyler Barron, but unlike last offseason, they actually addressed the defensive line. Not to the extent I think a lot of us wanted, but the fact that they actually invested draft capital in this line, they went out and spent in free agency. And I do think this is a position that if you had to ask me what position could get targeted as we get closer to the regular season training camp, I actually think it's going to be this defensive line. And the other curious thing is I'm curious to see how this defense is going to look. We know that Wilkes and we know that the Lions like to run a lot of 3-4. So are we going to see Will McDonald be more of an outside linebacker in this defense? We don't know. I mean, that also could be a strength too, because I think the Jets have really good linebackers and good speed on the edge. Maybe that's the way they make up for the lack of defensive tackles. And don't forget, they also have Leonard Taylor III coming in for a big second season. I think he's got a lot of talent, but I'm curious to see where he looks in camp. Now let's move to the linebacker position. And, of course, the big news was Sherwood stayed with the Jets during this offseason, the first big re-sign for this regime. Of course, Quincy's still on the team. I'm going to say that this is a push. Now, a lot of people will say that this is a downgrade because C.J. Mosley was a huge part of this defense. And I'll agree. I think C.J. Mosley was a big part of this defense. But last year, he was hurt the majority of the season. And I don't think he's the same player that if he somehow came back to the Jets for another go, I mean, of course, Mosley retiring, I just don't think Mosley was the same player. And again, I like Francisco Mwaga. I think he was a good tackling machine, and he gives this unit some size that they've desperately needed in the interior of the linebacking position. I think Mwaga, again, I'm not saying he's going to be a starter, but in early running downs, just that big over 6 foot frame, I think he's going to be someone to really help this run defense. So I do think that that is something to keep an eye on. And I do think that the linebacker position, especially on the speed side, is one of the better units on this team. Now let's go to the cornerback position. And I might surprise some people because, yes, the Jets spent a top draft pick on cornerback. Yes, the Jets signed Brandon Stevens. Yes, they still have Sauce Gardner. But I'm going to say that this is a slight downgrade. And I know a lot of people are going to jump out at me and say, well, wait a minute, how's this a downgrade? DJ Reed, you can make the case, was arguably coming into last season the best number 2 corner in football. And when you looked at this corner room last year, you knew that you had a great corner in Sauce. You knew you had probably arguably the best 1 through 3 unit. If you're to take your number 1 corner, number 2 in your slot, The Jets coming into last season had that. Now, Michael Carter, if he can come back healthy, it will be a huge impact in the slot. We all know Sauce is a great corner. We're hoping he gets more opportunities in this defense. But right now, there's a question around the number 2 corner on this team, which we didn't have last year. I mean, Stevens is the big one because is he going to be a safety? Is he going to be the team's starting cornerback this year? We don't know at this point, and I'm really curious to see Brandon Stevens is going to be starting. I mean, A.Z. Thomas, I do think will eventually be the starter alongside Sauce Gardner, but we're going to see how quick he can get his feet wet and how quickly he can get into this roster. Because Stevens, once again, we saw it last year. He has a lot of potential. He has a lot of upside, but he got beat a lot of times last year for Baltimore. So you're hoping he has a bit of a renaissance. But the big thing is the Jets, you didn't have questions about this cornerback room last year, and you have a big one with the number 2 position this year. Safety is probably the most overhauled position with the New York Jets, because if you really look at the Jets' safety position, they've only really returned one player, and that's Tony Adams. They added Andre Sisco, Malachi Moore, of course, they drafted. So what are my thoughts on this position? Surprisingly, I think that I might surprise people. I think that the safety room is upgraded, and here's why. A lot of it comes down with Andre Sisco, who you see pictured here on the live stream. He is a ball hawk. Yes, he had a down year last year in Jacksonville, but this is a guy that can create interceptions. He has been great at creating turnovers and creating havoc. That's one thing this Jets defense, especially the safety room, has been severely lacking. I also said that my favorite day 3 pick was Malachi Moore because I do think he is going to be a guy who will play significant snaps this year. He's an incredibly smart rookie. I think he's going to make a big impact on this defense. The big question is going to be really Tony Adams and Brandon Stevens. I mean, there's a world where Stevens eventually comes back into the safety role because let's say A.Z. Thomas is playing so well at the corner position. The big X factor is Tony Adams. We all know how much the last coaching staff loved him, but it's clear to me that I think if you were to ask me what this coaching staff is planning, they obviously like Andre Sisco. He's going to be this team's starting free safety. But for strong safety, it's clear that they were looking for more of a thumper, more for a guy that can play the run defense. And that to me is Malachi Moore. Tony Adams is more of a free safety. I think he starts the season. But as the season progresses, Malachi Moore will eventually be, if not this team's starting strong safety, he will be in there, especially for the running downs on the safety position. So I do think the safety position is upgraded. But before we get to special teams, make sure to comment in the comments what your thoughts are on the video. Also, let us know what videos you'd like to see in the future. If you want to donate to our channel and jump to the front of the line, make sure to use that super chat feature. All right, our final position, ladies and gentlemen, of the day will be special teams. And I think this is pretty obvious. I think that this is a downgrade just because we don't really know about the special teams. When you look at the Jets, they're basically playing the rookie slot machine. I mean, Austin McNamara, Kai Kroger for the punting units. Then you have for the place kicker, Caden Davis, Harrison Mavis. I mean, there's a lot. Thomas Hennessy obviously returning. Thomas Morstead, it was disappointing that he wasn't here, but I do get why the Jets released him. I think he probably told them in private, I want a season where I could compete again. I think the reason he came to the Jets was because he saw Aaron Rodgers and thought this was a chance to compete for a Super Bowl. Now, the big thing is going to be who becomes the kicker. Now, again, it's almost a kicking by default is an upgrade just because of how bad Greg Zuerlein was last year and how many games he cost them. But again, for the first time in a long time, the kicking position is wide open. The punting position is wide open. I would have liked to see some experience there, but unfortunately, the Jets have gone that different direction. I think what I'm very curious about is what's going to happen to this punt and kick return. Xavier Gipson, we know, had the big moment against the Bills, but since then, he's kind of cooled off. Isaiah Davis got some touches in that position last year. Kenny Nwangu has had success in the NFL. It's a kick returner. But as that running back position, if you keep Donovan Edwards, are you going to carry 5 running backs on game day? I'm not sure. I think a big X factor, and I've talked ad nauseum about this on the channel, I do think is Malachi Moore, especially as a kick returner. if he can really come on as a kick returner, I do think he can make a big impact and help the special teams. But this is the positions that, again, a lot of these positions on this team, I can see some growth. I have seen some at least younger players you hope can step up. But this really, to me, is going to be a big X factor because if the Jets can figure out the special teams, and I'm not saying be great, just be solid. Don't be bad at special teams. They'll be in games. But if they come into the season and the kickers aren't making kicks, if the punting is a liability, it's going to be a very difficult season because this is a team that, let's be honest, can't be making a lot of mistakes. And they can't be leaving the special teams open for those mistakes. So those are the upgrades and downgrades for the 2025 New York Jets roster. Would love your thoughts on the video. Again, the super chat feature is open. If you have any comments, would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Make sure to post in the comments as well if you would like to see if you would like to comment on the video, your thoughts, any questions about the New York Jets. The comment section is open. Make sure to reach out in the comments in the live stream. But look, I think my most controversial take from the video today will be that's a push with the quarterback position. Because for me, I just look at coachability. And I know it's such a cliche, but the thing with Justin Fields is he's going to run the play he's told to. With Aaron Rodgers last year, it was having him go out and run the offense. And when it wasn't working, he still was going to run the offense the way he wanted to. I mean, let's be honest. The two times that Aaron Rodgers really looked like Aaron Rodgers, let's be frank, we're in 2 games where he threw 8 touchdowns. And what were the 2 games? Jacksonville late in the season, where they had arguably one of the worst pass defenses of NFL history. And then you saw the final game of the season where he threw 4 touchdowns against the Dolphins. But let's also be frank, the Dolphins quit in the first quarter. They saw they weren't making the playoffs. They basically knew the season was over. I mean, that's one of the things, again, I'm starting to really hate about Week 18. Because Week 18 in the NFL now is starting to feel more like a preseason week because teams are just going to make sure to, protect themselves. They're not going to go out of their way to really make sure that they're not going to have anyone get hurt in those games. And you saw with the Dolphins, I mean, they had the season on the line, and unfortunately, they weren't able. They didn't do anything. So, again, those are my upgrades and downgrades. I'm just checking something really quick, making sure I'm going to the YouTube channel, making sure. Oh, there we go. So just making sure, again, chat is open, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to jump in there, if you have any comments, any questions, or if you have ideas for future videos, because, again, this is a bit of the leaner time for Jets content, of course, being in the middle of the summer. I hope everyone had an incredible 4th of July. I know I had a lot of fun, but I'm also going to try to do more content on the channel, more uniforms, more jerseys, have a little bit wider variety on this channel. But again, the Jets will be a main focus on this channel as always. I know our bread and butter will be the regular season because we will be coming on live after every single New York Jets game to break everything down, go through the game, preview next week. As I like to call it, it's Jets therapy. We've been there as your Jets therapist for years now. And again, we always appreciate the love and support. And if you're new to the channel, make sure to like and subscribe because it helps us with the algorithm. We want to get as many great Jet fans here as we can. Again, part of what makes the show amazing is you guys, because you guys provide great feedback. You guys provide great questions, great intel. So I really do appreciate whenever you guys jump in. But until next time, we're going to have a lot more great Jets content. Again, check the community page on YouTube so that you see the ideas for future videos that we have. Again, if you missed the live stream, but you still had a question, make sure to comment below. And of course, if you want to make sure to check us out wherever podcasts are available, check out TuneIn, Spotify, Spreaker, SoundCloud, wherever podcasts are available, you will be able to hear us. But that is our upgrades, downgrades, and pushes for the 2025 New York Jets roster. What are your thoughts? Where do you think the Jets got better? What positions do you think the Jets are lacking in? And what positions are just about the same as last year? Would love to hear from you guys. But again, thank you so much for joining us here on Rich Sports Talk. We will see you next time.